Hello everyone, MasterZeon1001 here, and in this video I want to talk to you about blank material in HardOps and Boxcutter and how you can use blank material to the max to quickly add materials to objects without a whole lot of effort and get started with just adding materials. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. One of my favorite hotkeys in HardOps is the Alt-M hotkey, which when pressed will bring up the material submenu. Normally there's a list of materials present in your scene. Usually, me personally, I don't have more than 35 materials in my scene, but for the sake of demonstration, we'll just duplicate this cube and Shift R, and then we'll duplicate it some more and Shift R. And we're just going to select everything and just give it a blank material just by control clicking it. And you can see that the material list has 20 items per section, and then it goes into another column. In the event that you need more materials to show in a column or less, you can do that just by going into your preferences, which is under your settings, and you can choose how many materials show up. For example, I can go to 5, and if I press Alt-M, you can see that my material list has a lot more going on. But I can also press Q and go back under my press and set this to something like, say, 35, which may be appropriate for my computer. And then whenever I press Alt-M, I see that that actually is not appropriate for this computer. So we'll actually set this back to 20, which turned out to be a nice little sweet spot for seeing your material list all at once. But I just wanted to go over some of the basics of dealing with your material list. Whenever it comes to your material list, Alt-M will bring it up. However, you can also access it through mesh tools, where you can also assign materials that way, as well as go through blank materials. At this moment, I have a decal selected, and you see that the material name is .Mrradioactiv, which is one of my favorite inserts. And if we press Alt-M, you can see that these don't actually show up in the list, and that's because we have a filter for hiding .names, which was something that started kind of with Machine. So whenever we press Alt-M, you can see that now I have those showing up in the material list as well. However, most of the time you don't want to actually see the materials of decals, because you don't want to assign decal materials to other things normally. So by choosing hide .names, you're able to have your material list remain pure. This also carries over into things like material scroll, which I'll be going over later. Blank material is my baby. This idea is one that's taken a long time to come together, and is one of the things that I'm quite proud of, because it shows the usefulness that can be made with the tool while also being slightly random. The idea kind of came about from Blender itself. Whenever they added this random viewport thing, whenever they added this and it gave me these pastel colors, I fell in love, and I felt that there's something that could be done to expand on that concept. So if you select your object and you press Alt-M, there's something called blank material, and whenever you just click it, it will just add a material to everything, the same material, which doesn't mean anything. However, if we look at it in render mode or look dev, we can get a good look at kind of what material we're getting here by just looking through some reflections. However, what I also like to do is just select everything and then control click blank material in order to assign a unique material per object. So now we're looking at each object getting its own random material, and each of these materials that are being generated are just randomly made. So you can just select something and go under Alt-M and just blank press F9 to bring up the F9 window, and just by clicking principal over and over, you can kind of reshuffle what you're getting on the roll. So I actually like what I got there. So now we'll hit this one with a blank material, and we'll just keep clicking principal over and over. However, the environment that I'm using may not be the most useful for what I'm trying to do, so I'll press Alt-V in order to just change to a different look dev environment, maybe something a little more agreeable. There we go. So now we can see what we're getting with our blank material. So I'll press Alt-M and we'll click on blank material again, and we'll just shuffle through just a couple of iterations just to see what we get. And this is just one of our systems. We also have systems for implementing things like glass. Like, for example, I'll add this cube. If we were to shift click blank material, this will add a glass material. And with this, we can just go in, add a sphere cast, and smooth it, and suddenly we have our glass sphere. So that's how easy it is to just make quick glass on the fly. The other thing is emission material. So let's say that we wanted to take a piece off of this. So I'll just switch over to Boxcutter real quick, and we'll just take a slice, and I'm just going to take this slice that we have and press Alt M, and under the tooltip we can see that alt clicking will actually add an emissive material. And the emissive material is also randomly generated. We can just click it over and over to just get different colors. And the good thing about this material is it has a driver built in that will make it pulse. So right now you can't really see the pulse. However, if we were to press Alt V, press Q, and turn on the bloom, then we actually are able to see what's going on here. And just keep in mind that anytime that you don't like what you're getting with your material, you can always just go in and just add a new blank material and just keep clicking to just jump through random combinations. In fact, this object might need a weighted normal, and this one might need a different blank material. But I do like ensuring that the metal pieces get something rather chrome-like. In fact, once you add the materials, you can really see that, you know, some of these parts might need a little bevel added to them, and then we shuffle them with a blank material. But blank material is there for you to just improve your blank material creation on the fly, because we feel that, you know, just adding a blank material that's just white every time is maybe not the most artistic way to approach things. So we just wanted to see about expanding on that to make it easier for users to just get a material that they can just add, and maybe even Shift R to just iterate through till they find the combination that they like. So blank material is there for you whenever it comes to that material block in phase. And then once you find something that you like, I always go and take something and I'll just rename it to Chrome, you know, instead of Chrome, just Chrome and metal, you know, and I'll just reuse, I don't know, I'm sarcastic now, but I'll just be reusing these. And then when I come through it on a scroll, I know that this is a key material that's going to be replaced with an accent later. And also I see a shading issue right in front of my face, but that's blank material in a nutshell. So the next thing to talk about is material scroll. So you probably saw blank material and thought, wow, that's a one-stop shop for materials. Well, sort of. Let's take a look at material scroll. So we'll just select everything. And with material scroll, you can either scroll through materials that are there by just generically clicking it, or you can control click or shift click. First, we'll talk about control click. Control click is blank material scroll. And while this seems like it's the same as the other one except hyper, the systems of materials that it's making and the configurations and presets and numbers and randomizations are of a slightly different system for something that we're experimenting with. But by being able to just quickly scroll, you're able to just quickly just find different looks and just freeze on the look you want. There's so much to this that, you know, I can't even go over it except with a more special video talking about it in depth. But you can do things in this like override certain material indexes. You can randomize it with the materials that are already present. You can press C and inject color into things, and then as you scroll you'll start seeing more color pop in, which was something I was initially against, but over time people have convinced me that color and other types of material types are probably essential for this idea to come together. But you notice that as I'm progressively scrolling, things are getting more and more random. And so for that reason, I just love material scroll, and blank material scroll at that. In fact, if we want to just go in and just look through the materials that we already have created, we can just do that by just clicking it without holding shift or control. And we can just find a material that's already present if we're trying to just kind of get the model to begin fitting inside of a certain look. You know, you start with this really broad look, and then you just start narrowing down with a little bit of randomness. And hopefully this is something that users can use to help kind of connect them to the more artistic side of things. This piece was a random box city that I made recently just to kind of test the tools. But this one's a good example of talking about material replacement and non-destructive material scroll. As you can see from my selection, this thing has a slew of materials in each slot. So the first one in this slot is this purple material. Let's say that I wanted to go inside material scroll and basically control click to basically go in and replace this material. So I'm replacing it in this one area. However, this material possibly has areas that it's also showing up in. So this may not be optimal because this scene's already been kind of established with the material blocking process. So I will just right click to cancel to put myself back where I started. And instead we'll press Alt M and we will shift click, which will bring up non-destructive material scroll. The name can be slightly deceptive. However, what it means is that instead of replacing material, we're actually replacing the nodes inside. So it's really destructive, but it also keeps your indexes. So now we've actually replaced it. We can go to this object, right? If we were to just control click and go through it, we've actually separated it from its connection with the other material. And now it's something unique. And you can see that through the material number progressing as we scroll. So I'm just going to right click cancel because we don't actually want that. What we actually want to do is go in and shift click to do a non-destructive scroll where we can actually replace every index of it in use at the time. So maybe I want to press C, scroll to color, and go for just a different look for this altogether because this is my main scene color. So we'll just click with that and just go with this terrible brown. But hopefully that shows you guys the difference between blank material scroll and non-destructive material scroll. Sometimes you want to replace the entire connection and make an entirely new material, and sometimes you want to replace just the nodes that are inside. When it comes to emission and pulse, there's two different emission pulse approaches inside of HardOps. Both of them have their perks. So the first one, I will take this object and using Boxcutter, I'm just going to perform a slice and we'll slice a piece off. And then I'm actually going to slice another piece off around it, except, are we in local mode? No, we are not. All right, just making sure. There we go. So if I press Alt M, we can Alt click to add a pulse material. And if we look at the pulse material that's added through the blank material system, we can see that it is pretty simple. However, if we press Shift Spacebar, we see that it pulses and gets the job done. In fact, the only value exposed is the power, and just by boosting that up, you can get exactly the amount of power you need to trigger the bloom. But let's look at the one that comes up as part of material scroll. So we press Alt M, and by control clicking, we can go into blank material scroll. And right now we're actually on the type of principle, which it says at the bottom. If I were to press tilde for the mini helper, which is one of my favorite ways to work whenever I'm not doing tutorials, you can actually press T and change the type. So there's car paints that you could scroll through. You could press T and now we're at emission. So we'll start scrolling through emission and you'll see that now we're getting random emissive materials. However, it's taking a moment for them to pop up, so we'll just keep scrolling. There we go. And now you can see the difference between this emissive material and the other one. While the other one is kind of a sharper pulse, the other emissive material is something that can be a little bit more gradual in its transitioning. In fact, let's change that to 18, and now we can see this doing its cycle. In fact, for some reason the cycle appears to be taking a little bit longer than usual, so we'll change this to 400. And you can see that, you know, through the other emissive material that we have a lot more parameters to play with. In fact, I think it's because I have a ton of frames going on and I just wasn't aware. These materials also differ in their correlation with the time frame. This pulse material is built to just simply pulse no matter what based on its own numerical values, while the other pulse that comes about via the scroll is connected to the timeline. This is something that is slightly different and we're still in the process of testing, so more than likely in the future this will be subject to change because dealing with such a thing is just crazy, I'm seeing. But the cool thing about this particular pulse material as well is that instead of just pulsing between black and a color, you can also have it pulse between two different materials. So I always like having it pulse between red and blue, and then adjusting the transition of the sharp to be something different to make it either sharper or to make it even more gradual. But both of these materials offer a degree of functionality and enjoyment to be had once you get in and begin playing with them. When it comes to hops and materials, I would be remiss to fail to mention Chipp Materials and our support for them as well. So if you have KitOps installed, pressing Q will bring up the KitOps Decal Machine PowerLink Asset Multiloader. Your version of the multiloader won't say KitOps 2 because that support hasn't been added yet, and KitOps 2 isn't out yet, but it will be very soon, so go and get it now. But if we were to control click on one of Chipp's materials, which you can do now if you actually already have Chipp Materials, we will just control click concrete and just scale it in a little bit. And this one is one of my favorites just because of how quick it is to just get in and just quickly get a scene in a presentable state. And then we just go through, start scrolling our blank light, finding the exact look that we want, and we are done. In fact, sometimes I will block out a scene with generic materials and then use Chipp Materials to finish the job. So we'll bring it up again, and this time we'll go to, I believe, Tech. And inside of Tech, there's some cool ones that I'm a fan of, like carbon fiber, something I wouldn't dare procedurally generate. And then from here, we can jump over to shading and actually adjust the parameters to get exactly the look that we want. So, for example, right here, it looks like it actually went around the sides just perfect. I thought it was skewing in the initial viewport, but looks like it's just fine. We'll change that to 0.3. Looks like I need to go the other way. And so once we go back over to layout, we see that, this is just a much better material than something I could generate using blank. I would have to get in and play with the node editor for a period of time in order to get something even close. So continuing on, we'll press Q and go under an asset loader again. And this time I will go under, let's see, I believe it's Chipp Paint. Car Paint it is. And with his car paints, there's also some fantastic ones here that I feel are a lot more well developed than the ones that we have inside of HardOps. We also have a generic car paint shader as well. However, I do always default to Chips because there's just something more vibrant in the accents and the way that it takes in the light. I don't know, just my take on it. But definitely had to give Chipp Materials a shout out since I use them so often in ads. Also, when it comes to materials, it's also worth noting that inside of our helper, pressing Control tilde, there is the material panel. And our material panel has also been modified to support blank material. So by clicking new inside of the material helper, instead of it adding a generic material like Blender would, it will add a blank material. And you can see that just by the difference in parameters. We can click X and remove it, just add another one, just keep doing it over and over to just look at our blank materials. However, if we hover over it and look at the tooltip, we can see that shift clicking will add a glass material and alt clicking will add an emissive material. So it's just that easy to add materials when it comes to dealing with HardOps. Also, if you're dealing with multiple indexes, we now support the ability to say clear an index and just add a blank material there, or say clear an index, which we'll just create a second index real quick. There we go. And so if we go inside of our Control tilde and we just click, you can see that it will assign a material. We alt click, it adds a emissive material. We shift click, it will add a glass material. And it's just that easy to just add materials on the fly using the Hops material panel. It also goes without saying that there is the ability to do what's called material cut, which means you can assign a material that will be cut into something the moment you make a cut. So we'll just choose this emissive and just click OK. And clicking OK is not even necessary. Once you set it, you can just clear it. And we'll just solidify this. Oh, I thought it was a plane. We'll just solidify this plane and just scale it up. And if we select both of these and perform a difference, it puts an emissive material in it. However, for the purpose of theatrics, we will choose slash, and you can see the intended result here. We will just go ahead and add another cube, Alt G, place it here. And let's say that we wanted to not cut emissive. Let's say we wanted to cut this metal looking material. So now every time we make a cut, whether it's a difference or even if we go in interactive boolean and we just scroll through a slash, we can just quickly cut a different type of material in. The interesting thing is that, in addition to supporting material cut, whenever you add this as a bool shift, for instance, it will also take the setting into account. So here I am clearing the cutting material, and then I will just perform a difference. And so, generic difference, nothing fancy here. So if we go in and we actually assign the blank material of material 05, and then we just bool shift it, which will shift it into a slice, we can see that that material didn't actually take. Or it did take, it just didn't assign it in the proper index like we were hoping. So that's something that we'll more than likely need to check into. However, when it comes to material, there's always more perfection to be obtained, as you're seeing here. So continuing on, in addition to supporting material cut, but maybe not material ship, maybe not bull shift, we also support something called blank material cut. So if you were to go under Boxcutter, you can see that there is support for the HardOps cutting material, which is right here. However, just having a material here is just generic. It will just do generic material cutting. But in conjunction with HardOps, there's a new option called blank, which means that if you were to cut, it will now assign a new material. So we'll just do a cut and slash, and you can see that that is adding a new material. And basically every cut will add a new material from here on out. I could just select everything and just hit it with a weighted normal in order to fix that shading that's right in front of my face. But I just wanted to show that blank material has expanded far into hops, and you're also able to use it in conjunction with Boxcutter. And also blank material is now a cutter type mod that you're able to use like you're seeing here. I have a pretty big bevel going on, so in the event that I was actually trying to get around such a thing, I would just put a weld on it, maybe bump it up one and just find a good number. Sometimes you have to just bring back the cutter and just make slight adjustments in order to ensure these sort of things don't happen. But that is blank material cut in a nutshell. Previously, I showed how in Boxcutter there's a cutting material parameter in conjunction with HardOps that you're able to use. However, let's say that there was no cutting material. Let's say that we were just doing a slice. I'll press H for wire to add to the ability to see. And if you do a cut and press M, you will begin cycling through the materials of your scene for the slice. So now we're just assigning the slice a material based on just what we're selecting on the fly. So we'll do another cut, and just by pressing M, we can change that material. And this isn't exclusive to slice, as you're seeing here. We can also do it inside of cut, but I like doing it inside of slice. So it was actually intended for slice, and the fact that it even extends is a bit of an oversight on my side. However, it is a welcome addition to have material cut supported in full. There's also another degree of support for material cut inside of Boxcutter, and that is, first we'll create some blank materials, and that is with inset. Inset is something that requires a very special material cut solution. So I just want to let it be known that we cared about that solution and also took care to ensure that people got the type of material cut that they deserve. So if we press T, you can press M, and you can see that the material cut is actually cutting only this inside area. And to do this, this requires that we actually add the material index to the rim material of the thing itself while assigning a null to the main, which is a different way of approaching material cut compared to our previous attempts. But I just wanted to let it be known that we did care about its integration enough in depth to get into it with inset as well. And this also should carry over to HardOps. Right now I'm actually recording this at 4 o'clock, but on normal days I would just wake up in the morning and just take a cube and just put a bevel on it, and then Control Shift click in order to add a second bevel at 60 degrees and press X to drop it at half the bevel width, and then I would just hit it with a blank material and just go to town. And I always like working for some reason with it pretty generic, and then at the end add all the blank material goodness. So we'll just add another material, add another bevel level here, and we're just doing slices, just taking this box to Box City. In fact, my next reaction is always to fix shading whenever I see it occurring. However, it's not always necessary to fix it immediately, since the weighted normal modifier can sometimes cause performance issues in the thick of things, especially once you start getting real heavy into your work. But in any case, we'll just select everything, and under add modifier, we'll just hit weighted normal, and keep sharp will be checked by default to ensure that everything looks all right. And so we'll just select everything and just Control click to just give it a unique material. And then I'll just add a plane S80GZ-1, and we'll just put that at the floor and add a blank material to that as well. And now we'll just look at it and render. So the next thing I like to do at this point is press Alt-V and then press C to just turn all the lights off. And I'll just leave it like that until I press Alt-V B to go into blank light, and I'll just scroll through blank light iterations until I find a randomized perfect rig that just encapsulates how I want this cube to be presented. And so once I have a nice starting point, in fact, with the floor being the way it is, it may be hard to perfectly dictate, but I think I'm just going to roll with that. So the next thing is I just want to, select all of the cube here, and we'll just control click through material scroll and just randomly scroll through random combinations of what kind of materials we could possibly be getting here. And so while this is a bit of a terrible example to kind of close the video on, I just wanted to just kind of show you guys how I use blank material in action, sometimes just with little tool tests just to get very quick materials on the fly. I mean, there's nothing major about this thing, so I'm hoping that people just are able to get into it without a whole lot of difficulty, because it is such a fun time, and it's nice to be able to just have your scene instantly able to be presentable, at least on a basic level, and to just get a little bit of a helping hand when it comes to getting these material block-ins in. So we'll press X, we'll press M a couple of times to just get a blank material, maybe press X to change that back to a slice, and then press spacebar. We can just select everything and just material scroll again until we get something a little bit more unique. Sometimes I find that the material scroll will get me in these kind of stormtrooper kind of looks, and I don't know what to say, I'm just into it. But also pressing C to change to color will allow you to add color to your scene and just begin kind of taking it in a different direction, which is sometimes what I like to do. I'll be cutting something and I'll just come up with an accent color that will kind of be the theme of the goal itself. So, with this one, it could be that my goal is to have it be blue da-ba-dee-da-ba-die, but there could be a chance that I just go in and just hit this thing with a shift-click material scroll to begin changing each instance of that into something else, and then press C to just go to color and just find a completely different color, but still maintain my accent. Like maybe I'm more in a pastel mood, and that's what I'm going for here. But I just wanted to close out with just a small demonstration of at least just how I use this thing on the fly. In fact, this material just a little too dark, so we'll just scroll that through. But the idea was to make something that would feel kind of like a character customizer for meshes and make it feel fun and interactive to get in there and just adjust what kind of materials you were just throwing on your mesh, if you're just the kind of person just throw materials on something.